Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, before I start with my presentation, I would like to thank you, Her Royal Highness, Princess Basin Albertine, for having the opportunity to work in the great environment of the Royal Botanical Garden. We got all support we need in that surrounding to come up with good results and to conduct our or to carry out our work there. And secondly, I want like to thank my co-workers, Professor Ahmad and May. Without their support, I would not be able to present any result today. Many thanks to them as well. So the outline or the content of my presentation is I will give you a general introduction, where we are from, where I am from, and as a second introductive part, I will tell you a little bit about the legal background of water protection in Europe. That may show you that using bioindicators for water quality description is not only a crazy idea from a German scientist, but it is well established throughout Europe and is the first method to describe the quality of our freshwater resources. And I will continue with the aims of the project. I will show you the main results, and I will try to explain you what is biofilm monitoring and what is macroinvertebrate survey. And then I can proudly show you the first very preliminary results from our work here. And I will close the presentation with a summary and a outlook what we are going to do within the next months or within the next year. So first of all, what is the Institute for Water and River Basin Management? So this institute is created in 2005, unifying three formerly independent university institutes. And now within that new structure of the Institute for Water and River Basin Management, we are comprising the traditional disciplines of water management. So we have, for instance, competencies in hydrology, we have competencies in the hydraulics of waters and the hydraulics of construction work in water, and we have the chair of aquatic environmental engineering, which I'm leading. And this chair, in this chair we have again 4 subdivisions or 4 sections, you may say. The first one is resource and energy management, which means that we understand liquid and solid waste from urban areas as a resource for energy and, for instance, for nutrients or for fertilizer. So this is the reasoned way to treat wastewater is not trying to get rid of the COD or of any pollutants, but trying to utilize the resources that are in the wastewater and that are in our solid waste. The second section of our institute is, of our chair, is river basin management, and that means that we are trying to, do not try, but we do it, that we are modeling the substance inflow from the terrestrial part of river catchments into the water bodies for the whole area of Germany and some of our European neighbors. And with that modeling work, we are considering nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, and as well some pollutants like heavy metals or other so-called priority pollutants, which are defined by the European Commission. And in the third section, this is called urban water management. This section is mainly active in the management of all water that is abundant or that is present in urban areas. That means surface water bodies like running waters, which we are trying to bring to the surface again in our urbanized areas, but as well stagnant waters like ponds and lakes, which are used for swimming, and as well the resource or the runoff of storm events, so the routing and the treatment, the appropriate treatment of stormwater is one of the most important activities in that section. And last but not least, we have the section appropriate technologies, and this section is aiming on the implementation of appropriated technologies for water and wastewater treatment in developing and emerging countries, especially for rural areas. So in the main emerging countries, we have already implemented well-working water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities in the urbanized areas. But we do have, or we observe a great lack of sanitation and water treatment or water supply, especially for the rural areas. And there it is necessary to develop special, very well-adapted technologies so that the people there can operate the system and can maintain the system by themselves. So that is a short overview of what we are doing at our chair. So that brings me to the European Water Framework Directive, which becomes into law in 2000. And the overall game of this Water Framework Directive is to establish a framework for the protection of all inland surface waters like rivers and lakes, for all transitional waters, and for all coastal waters and groundwater bodies, in order to prevent further deterioration of these water bodies and to protect and enhance the status of all aquatic ecosystems and their dependent terrestrial ecosystems and wetlands. That was in 2000 a very new approach, and this means it was coastal waters and groundwater bodies, in order to prevent further deterioration of these water bodies and to protect and enhance the status of all aquatic ecosystems and their dependent terrestrial ecosystems and wetlands. That was in 2000 a very new approach, and this means it was a really challenge for European water policy to adopt such a framework, because it comes with very new principles and it comes with very new objectives, principles that are pretty similar to the principles of the Royal Botanical Garden project. So what are the principles? So water protection has to be in future always watershed based. So we are not protecting water within the political borders of European national states, but within the hydrological borders of river systems. It had also, is also a principle that we have also used a combined approach. That means all activities and all measures we are doing in our river basins have to meet emission limit values, and they have to meet environmental quality standards, which are set by the European Parliament and the Commission. And the objectives of that Water Framework Directive is that we are aiming to reach or to achieve a good ecological status of all surface water bodies by 2015, which is a very, very ambitious goal all out Europe. So any surface water in Europe has to reach a good ecological status in the first round by 2015. Another objective is that we do not accept any decline in the status of, or the given status of our surface water bodies, and in particular of our groundwater bodies. The groundwater is to keep in his natural status. That is written very clearly in the European law. We have a very strong, or the European Water Framework Directive firstly involves a very strong stakeholder involvement and an integrated management of our water resources, and for that we have to develop so-called river basin management plans or river management plans. So the main objectives of these river basin management plans is that we have to describe their methods for the quantity, for the management of the water quantity to prevent water scarcity and to prevent floods. It includes as well measures for the management of the quality in order to reduce water pollution and to increase the ecological status of our aquatic systems, so the biodiversity, for instance, but as well the integrity of the freshwater community. And it includes as well the management of a hydrological and morphological status of rivers and their floodplains to abate deterioration of structure of the aquatic and land ecosystems and to stop the interruption or to draw back the interruption of the connectivity of our river systems. So far to that legal background in Europe that may have illustrated you that the biology is a very important part, or the ecology is a very important part in the protection of our surface water bodies. And that brings me to the aims of that little project we can carry out in the Royal Botanical Garden. It is a feasibility study focusing on the surface water quality, and this feasibility study is a part of the long-lasting and huge Smart 2 project, and that means sustainable management of available water resources with innovative technologies. So the objective of our small project is to check the applicability of biological methods in Jordan River and Wadis. That means we're trying to figure out if the methods which are well proven in Germany or in European countries are producing reliable results under the conditions we are finding here in that region. What methods are we using? We use biofilm monitoring for the assessment of water pollution, for instance heavy metals or polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And we use macroinvertebrates survey to evaluate the overall ecological status of the rivers and wadis in the system. Why biological methods? What is the advantage or the beneficial thing with that biological methods? So the results of the biofilm monitoring are directly related to ecological impact. The biofilm is the basis of is one of the bases of any aquatic food net. So the pollution we can monitor in the biofilm will enter the food net because the many organisms are grazing on these biofilms. And secondly, the macroinvertebrates are integrating over several environmental parameters. So they draw us a picture considering, for instance, the organic load that is present in the river, but as well the discharge or the bottom structures, the availability of habitats, not only in the water but as well in the surrounding area. So some of that insects, which are indicator organisms, they need specific bushes and trees sorry, I'm missing the word. To reproduce. Thank you. And from there, they just give us a very good picture how the situation at a certain spot is. So what is biofilm monitoring? Biofilm monitoring is a method that is based on aquatic biofilms. Aquatic biofilms are representing a microbial community with various cellular organisms like bacteria, like protozoa, like fungi, and we do not find them only in aquatic systems. The biofilm is everywhere, but it is especially abundant on any surface that is exposed to water. The biofilms, or this microorganism community, has the ability to incorporate contaminants, and that's why we can use them as a pollutant monitor. They grow rapidly in the water, and they offer from there a very easy sampling method. The advantages of the biofilm monitoring in comparison to traditional monitoring, like taking water samples or taking sediment samples, is that they are the method is very inexpensive. We just need, as you see here, a kind of a coverage to protect the glass sheets, which is the surface where the biofilm grow. So all the equipment is very inexpensive. It is easy to handle, so we do not need special trained partners to bring out these biofilm samplers or to collect the material. We do have very low site-specific requirements. For instance, we do not need energy, or we do not need pumps or something like that. And the biofilm will give us a time-integrated result. So if we bring out the biofilm samplers to the freshwater body, they will be there for 14 days. And from there, later on, the biofilm will tell us a story over the last 14 days, the story of pollutants that pass through that river. And that is really a great advantage in comparison to taking water samples, because then if you take a water sample, you just get the information for that split of a second you take out the water. What is biofilm? Again, here's a summary of the features of biofilm. So I mentioned it before, it's created by microorganisms, and these microorganisms are excreting a slimy substance that is called extracellular polymeric saccharides. And it is from there, or these extrapolymeric saccharides are the basis of many aquatic food nets. They are able, and that is what we use, if we use them as a monitor, they are able to accumulate to some extent very fine solids and pollutants in particulate and solute form. And that allows us to analyze even very low environmental concentrations. You know, most of the pollutants of concern are present in very low environmental concentrations, but however, they are harmful. And the biofilm, or as the biofilm accumulates to some extent the substances, so we are able to analyze these substances in these very low concentrations. So the second part of the project is the macroinvertebrate survey. So the first part is focusing on pollutants or on quality of water. The second part, the macroinvertebrate survey, is focusing on ecological quality of the system. So it is based on macroinvertebrate communities, and these are communities represented by different insectal larvae, by crustacean, by snails, by clams, and by worms. They are abundant in almost all surface water bodies, and they are reflecting all the predominant environmental conditions, for instance, the oxygen household, the structure of the substrate, and many more. And if we take a closer look, a more detailed look to that specific indicators, organisms, they are allowing a detailed analysis of very specific ecofactors ruling the whole system. Advantages again, getting the macroinvertebrates is very inexpensive. We do not have any site-specific requirements, and again they are drawing integrated pictures about the status of the river reach under consideration. The disadvantage is maybe the same disadvantage you have already faced with the work in the herbarium. Some of these species are very difficult to determine, And that means we do need a detailed knowledge about the aquatic fauna present in Jordan. And so there's a lot of work waiting for us. So this slide just should illustrate you the principle of that macroinvertebrate classification of rivers. What we see here is that macroinvertebrates in rivers are not even distributed. The different indicator organisms, they all have their specific environmental demands, and only if a spot meets all the demands of a certain organism, the organism will settle the environment. And so it was developed to indicate heavy pollution caused by the discharge of untreated wastewater in our surface water body. And this picture shows you what happens if we have such a situation. Here in that row you see the discharge of the wastewater, and directly after the inlet point, a rapid decay of the organic material will start, and this decay will consume all the oxygen that is available in the water. And that will cause a significant and characteristic change in our freshwater community. What we find here, where we see class 4 bad condition, are only organisms which can stand very low oxygen concentration or very high organic pollutants. And then in the course of the self-purification process in our river, the community will recover. Or the oxygen household, the oxygen concentration will recover first, and then the different indicator organisms will come back. And so the river developed from class 4 bad to good conditions, or almost to the conditions we have at the beginning here of that slide, where we have very good conditions. And that is what we use to indicate, or this principle is used for the bioindication based on macroinvertebrates. So now the area of investigation, as mentioned at the beginning, we are proud to be able to work in the Royal Botanic Garden, and up to now we have taken samples from Wadi al-Rumman and from Al-Saka River, and we have also taken some samples of the King Talal Dam. So here some first results of the biofilm monitoring. 2 samples of Wadi al-Rumman are taken, dried and analyzed in Karlsruhe, and are given us the first results. And these 2 samples are indicating almost no pollution of that small river in regards to heavy metals. To make it a little clearer, I have at this table that shows you the value. The sample 1 and sample 2 is from Wadi al-Rumman, and we analyzed iron, lead, copper, zinc and cadmium. And just to give you an idea what the numbers, what is the meaning of the numbers, I add in the last line the average concentrations in biofilms from 2 German rivers. And these 2 German rivers are as well not polluted or only slightly polluted. And what we see if we compare these values from the German rivers with the samples of Wadi al-Rumman is that we really find a very low concentration of the heavy metals near to the natural background. What we found as well is very high iron concentration, and you can see it if you go outside to the field that you find all these traces of iron where the water seeps out from the bank of the river. Another thing we can state at this point is that the values are very constant, very stable. You may say, oh, he tells me very stable, but here, for instance, for copper, he has in sample 1 8.21 milligrams per kilogram, and in sample 2 4.82 milligrams per kilogram. But let me say you that this is very stable. Because if you take water samples or if you take sediment samples, you won't face differences twofold or threefold higher concentration, but you will find differences in a magnitude of order. So that is another advantage of these biofilm sampling, that they are producing very stable signals or very stable results. So we have taken already further 10 samples from the reservoir. They are collected, they are dried, and I will take them tomorrow to Germany to analyze them for the heavy metals. Here are the first results of the Macroinvertebrate survey from Vadiyah, Roman. In total, and these pictures are giving you some impressions of, this is from, I think, 2 days ago, where we were out taking some samples, and in total we found 16 different organisms, families, groups, species. We are not ready with the determination of these organisms on species levels. That will be the work of the next weeks or months. But what we can say at this point is this is quite a diverse community of different freshwater organisms, especially in comparison to the Alsaca River, where we do only find three, maybe four different organisms, 4 different species, and where the community is dominated by only one species. So, so from there, these results of the macroinvertebrate survey, to some extent, approve the results of the biofilm monitoring. The system seems to be very unpolluted. And here the pictures on the right-hand side show you some of the most important organisms we found there in the system. The first one is a dragonfly, Epalage Fatima. The second one is a mayfly from the family of Baitidae, which is frequently present there. The third one is a caddisfly from the genus Hydropsyche, and the last one is a crustacean. When we have already the species, it's Acellus aquaticus. So let me summarize what I've tried to tell you. On the basis of the 2 samples of Wadi Aruma, we can say that the water is almost unpolluted in regards to the heavy metals. We do not know yet